A question has come up. I know that people have asked me in the past, was Jesus basically registered? Now, it did say in the scripture that they were on their way, Joseph and Mary, to uh, follow through at the registration that Caesar that said, let's register the world. If you understand that clearly, he's not talking about real individuals. He's talking about the fictions and the titles that the Romans needed in order to keep a track of all their taxable entities that were going to float around there in commerce in Rome. So, anyways, when we look at scripture, the interesting thing was that the book of Matthew, 1 verse 19 states, then Joseph, her husband, being a just man and not willing to make, this is Mary, to make her a public example, was minded to put her away privily, private. So he didn't make her public. So they didn't register. It wasn't in the cards. That did not happen. Now, if we go further, we'll go into scripture in Luke 2, verse 7. And speaking of Mary, and she brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in a swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. Now, when you deal with these things, the inn would have been a public house that the state would have required registration, and there was no room for them at the inn. So they didn't even get into the inn. So Jesus wasn't in their public. And Joseph and Mary had not registered. So therefore, was Jesus then basically a legal bastard? Well, I'm going to just a little sheet that I photocopied out of the laws of England. I've got all the laws of England in another room here. We don't want to go into that. I'd have more books piled and cluttered than you normally see. So under the definition of a bastard in regarding name, it says a bastard has no surname by inheritance, but may acquire one by reputation. Just take it on. Okay? But it says a bastard has no surname by inheritance. Well, Jesus wouldn't have had a surname. He wouldn't have been involved in anything to do with the public. God didn't need to register his property with Satan's legal state. So when you look at the scripture, clearly we can see that Jesus was private, so was Mary and Joseph in this matter, and he was not ever in their jurisdiction. In fact, if you look up the word bastard, it has a very unique meaning, and basically it states one conceived in a barn. It's kind of like born in a barn. So a manger would be a barn. We certainly know he was in something that had to do with farm animals. He was inside that. He was in a stable. So therefore, Jesus to the legal world was a bastard because he wasn't part of their world. He was not from their world. He was of the highest level kingdom from heaven. So therefore, we can understand that there's a reason to really research deeply into the scriptures so we can get these things that are inaccurate in our mind. We had to get the false knowledge, information out of our temple because that's where the contamination has happened. And unfortunately, this has happened again from mainstream legal registered 501c3 Christian claiming faiths.